People often spoke of a strange legend in the quiet town of Cold Springs. They whispered about an old orphanage at the end of Sycamore Avenue, which appeared only on Halloween night. It was said to be haunted, cursed by its dark history. Long ago, children had vanished there, and strange rituals were rumored to have occurred within its walls. The townspeople warned everyone to stay away, especially on Halloween. But Emma and her friend Oliver were drawn to the spot this Halloween. The two teenagers had been playing hide-and-seek after school and had wandered too far. To their surprise, they ended up on Sycamore Avenue, staring at an old building they had never seen before. The orphanage loomed before them, dark and silent, wrapped in shadows. They both felt excited, thinking they were lucky to stumble upon the legendary place on Halloween night. Despite the fear in Oliver's eyes, Emma's curiosity pushed her forward and he reluctantly followed. Inside, the air was cold and still, like a frozen place. As they walked through the dark hallways, Emma noticed strange portraits of children on the walls. Their eyes seemed to follow them, watching from within the cracked and peeling frames. Shadows seemed to move at the edges of their vision, vanishing whenever they turned to look. Soon, a soft, eerie lullaby filled the air, faint but chilling. It felt as if someone or something was inviting them deeper into the orphanage. They found themselves in a long hallway lined with tiny beds. The blankets were dusty and torn as if left in a hurry. A worn teddy bear sat on one pillow, its button eyes glinting in the dim light. As Emma approached it, a dark, thick liquid began seeping from the walls around them. Blood dripped slowly, pooling at their feet. The metallic smell filled the air, and Emma felt fear run down her spine. A door at the end of the hallway stood slightly open, leading them down a spiral staircase into a dark room below. The scent of blood grew stronger as they descended, and the lullaby became louder, echoing through the still air. At the bottom, they found a room cluttered with old toys, tiny shoes, and strange symbols scrawled on a blackboard. A large, cracked mirror caught their eye in the corner, its frame stained with dark smears. As they looked into the mirror, Emma and Oliver froze. Faint outlines of small, pale faces stared back at them from the glass. Emma suddenly remembered the story her grandmother had told her, how the orphanage manager had used children's blood in strange rituals, trapping their spirits forever. She had bound them to the orphanage, hiding their souls in mirrors to keep her dark secrets protected. Crows cawing filled the air, though no birds were in sight. Fear gripped them both, and they turned to flee, racing up the stairs toward the exit. But just as they reached the top, an invisible force pushed them, and they tumbled backwards, falling into darkness. When they awoke, it was morning. They found themselves lying in a soft bed, sunlight streaming through the window. Disoriented and confused, they realized they were in the spare room at Oliver's grandmother's house. She explained that she had found them lying unconscious in the woods near Sycamore Avenue during her early morning walk. She had seen no orphanage, just an empty lot covered in mist. With a serious expression, she recounted the legend of the Cold Springs Orphanage. It had been a place where children mysteriously disappeared, and the manager was known to have practiced dark magic, using children's blood to trap their spirits in the mirrors. The orphanage was said to appear only on Halloween night, a shadowy place that vanished with dawn. As Emma looked down, she noticed a faint red handprint on her wrist, the small shape of a child's hand. She glanced at Oliver and saw the same mark on his wrist, both bearing the haunting proof of their Halloween encounter with a place that shouldn't exist. The small coastal town of East Bay was shrouded in dark lore, its history entangled with eerie stories about the sea. Tales of lost fishermen and ghostly apparitions had been whispered for generations, all linked to a deadly hurricane that struck the town on Halloween night in 1837. Locals avoided the shore each year on that night, wary of the spirits said to haunt it. But Claire Martin, a skeptical investigative journalist, saw these stories as tall tales meant to keep people away. She believed something mysterious, or perhaps illegal, occurred on Halloween and was determined to find out. After reading an old book titled The Haunting of East Bay, Claire became fascinated by the accounts of ghostly happenings on the beach, especially the description of a hurricane that had swept through East Bay on Halloween night at exactly 1:30 a.m., dragging fishermen into the depths. With a firm resolve to uncover the truth, Claire arrived in East Bay just before Halloween, ready to challenge the legends for herself. Ignoring the locals' warnings, she set out to the beach as night fell, confident she'd find nothing but an empty shore. As she wandered down the deserted beach, her lantern casting long shadows, the air grew colder and more foreboding. Looking out over the waves, she noticed boats drifting eerily close to the shore, their frames rocking slowly. She expected to see sailors aboard, but each vessel was empty, and on their flags, symbols of skulls and crossbones flapped in the chilling breeze, faded and worn. Claire's heart quickened. Dismissing the sight as strange but harmless, she continued, her curiosity urging her forward. The quiet pressed in on her as she moved along the shoreline, but a sudden burst of flapping wings broke the silence, and she looked up to see a flock of birds circling above. She recognized them as seabirds native to the western coast, far from their usual habitat. Their sharp calls pierced the air, echoing across the beach, and the sight unsettled her. Why were they here, flying in circles at such an odd time? The birds' cries grew louder, drowning out the soft murmur of the waves, but Claire brushed off the feeling of unease and pushed forward. As the moonlight stretched over the sand, Claire noticed fresh footprints appearing just ahead of her. They were small, bare footprints illuminated in the silvery glow and led down the beach toward the water. She hesitated, but the strange trail piqued her curiosity. Moving slowly, she followed them, her steps overlapping with the prints. After several paces, however, the footprints vanished, leaving the sand smooth and untouched. Claire glanced around, her pulse quickening as she searched the empty beach. The disappearance of the footprints was impossible to explain, but she reminded herself she was here for facts, not fables. The waves grew louder, their rhythm building in an unnatural pattern. The water seemed to pulse, each swell higher than the last, as though stirred by something dark and ancient. The eerie quiet gave way to a loud rumble, and Claire's instincts told her to retreat, but she felt a strange compulsion to stay. A powerful sense of déjà vu washed over her, and she recalled the description of the hurricane in The Haunting of East Bay, the violent storm that had struck at exactly 1:30 a.m., claiming the lives of fishermen. Curiosity took hold as she glanced down at her watch. Her stomach dropped. It was 1:30 a.m., precisely. Suddenly, the waves surged, transforming into towering swells mirrored the descriptions she had read, their shapes dark and menacing. The water was rising in a deadly pattern, each wave crashing closer with a force that was impossible to escape. Panic seized her as she stumbled back, but just as she turned, a massive wave, high and fierce, crashed against her. The cold, relentless water wrapped around her legs, dragging her toward the sea with an unbreakable grip. Claire struggled, gasping for air, but the pull was too strong. She felt the icy grasp of the waves dragging her further under, the shadows swallowing her as the moon disappeared from view. By dawn, the beach was calm once more. Locals discovered Claire's notebook, her lantern, and her coat washed up on the shore, her notes trailing off mid-sentence. Hollow Lane was once a peaceful neighborhood in Newbury, a small American town known for its quiet streets and historic homes. The old oaks, manicured lawns, and the familiar faces of families who had lived there for generations made it a picture-perfect place. But everything changed one Halloween season when a construction crew arrived to work on a new project. The plans were simple: extend the basements of a few homes to add guest rooms and entertainment spaces. But as the workers dug deeper, they uncovered something chilling. Hidden just below the surface, fragments of old, crumbling headstones began to appear. Local historians confirmed it was an unmarked 1800s cemetery, forgotten over time and buried under soil layers. Some residents saw this as an intriguing piece of history, but others felt unease, sensing that some things are best left undisturbed. From that day forward, Hollow Lane changed. Strange occurrences began to happen almost immediately. At night, residents reported hearing faint sounds that drifted through their homes, like soft, sorrowful weeping carried by the wind. At first, people dismissed it as the creaks and groans of old houses, but soon even the most skeptical residents couldn't shake the sense that something was watching them from the shadows. The first unexplained incident happened at the Petersons' home. Mrs. Peterson woke one night to hear footsteps just outside her bedroom door. Heart racing, she crept to the door and opened it, only to find an empty, silent hallway. But as she stood there, a cold breeze drifted past her, carrying a faint sense of something sorrowful and unsettled. She shivered, closing the door quickly, unsure of what she had felt. Word of these eerie happenings spread quickly, and other families along Hollow Lane soon reported unsettling experiences. Photos vanished from walls, only to reappear days later with faces mysteriously faded, as if blurred by age. Toys moved from rooms without explanation, and pets began acting strangely, barking at empty corners or refusing to enter certain rooms. At night, lights flickered unexpectedly, and faint shadows drifted through the yards, always just out of sight. The experiences grew increasingly bizarre. Some families reported hearing soft scratching at their windows in the middle of the night. Others spoke of strange chills that filled certain rooms, making them feel unwelcome. Hollow Lane became quieter, each family keeping to themselves, reluctant to discuss what they couldn't explain. Among the residents were the Lamberts, a family who had moved to Hollow Lane only a year before. They had heard the stories but tried to brush them off as neighborhood gossip. However, they grew concerned when their 5-year-old daughter, Emily, started talking about friends who visited her at night. Emily described seeing shadowy figures at her bedside, faces she couldn't recognize. She didn't know who they were, only that they seemed sad, leaving her with a strange sorrow she couldn't explain. One night, Mrs. Lambert woke to a light, scratching sound at her bedroom window. As she pulled back the curtain, she felt an unexpected wave of dread, like someone was just beyond her line of sight. She found nothing outside the window, but the sensation lingered, leaving her feeling watched and uneasy. Deep down, she knew there was something wrong. Disturbed by the unexplainable events, the residents of Hollow Lane sought guidance from Father Raymond, a priest from a nearby church. Known for his experience with unsettling situations, Father Raymond listened carefully as families shared their stories, whispers of mournful sounds, vanishing items, and an overwhelming feeling of being watched. He paused in the Lamberts' basement, sensing a thick, lingering darkness, like a sadness soaked into the walls themselves. He explained to the families that the graveyard's unearthing had likely stirred something that should have remained at rest. He said the unease they felt was not necessarily due to spirits, but a disturbance, sadness and anger tied to the lives that had been buried and forgotten. The residents were not dealing with mere shadows. They were facing an echo of grief and unrest that would not settle until the graveyard was restored. That Halloween night, Hollow Lane was quieter than ever. Each family tried to ignore the strange feelings, but the eeriness of the night was unavoidable. The cold seeped into every room, and an unnerving silence fell over the neighborhood. The quiet was broken only by an occasional thump or whisper-like creak, sounds that felt like warnings. The Lamberts sat together in their living room, their unease growing as they heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps slowly moving up their staircase. Each step was deliberate, almost purposeful, Yet when Mr. Lambert went to check, he found nothing but the stillness of an empty hallway. Over the next few days, families along Hollow Lane began to leave, each eager to escape the unrelenting tension and unexplained phenomena. Yet the Lamberts stayed, hoping that, with time, the unease would fade. They reasoned they had lived there peacefully for a year before the graveyard was uncovered. But one cold November morning, the quiet on Hollow Lane grew more profound than ever before. Neighbors realized they hadn't seen the Lamberts in days. Concerned, Mr. Peterson checked on them, only to find no answer at the door. When the police arrived and entered the house, they found everything as if the Lamberts had stepped out. Meals half-eaten, shoes by the door, jackets hanging in the hallway. But the family was gone, leaving only a sense of eerie calm. In Emily's room, her toys were neatly arranged in a strange, circular pattern, as if placed with intention. Family photos lay scattered across the floor, each face blurred and faded, barely recognizable. Rumors spread quickly, and Hollow Lane emptied within a week, leaving the houses abandoned, curtains were drawn, and windows dark. In time, the town blocked off Hollow Lane, allowing the once vibrant street to decay, much like the forgotten graveyard beneath it. Yet on misty Halloween nights, some locals swear they still hear faint sounds drifting from Hollow Lane. A soft creak, a shuffling of footsteps, a sense of sorrow and searching that refuses to fade, as if the memories of those lost still linger, trapped in an unending night.